In 1974, director Sidney Lumet set out to do the impossible. Adapt one of Agatha Christie's most famous whodunits, Murder on the Orient Express, and stuff it with more stars than the Hollywood Walk of Fame. You've got Albert Finney, Lauren Bacall, Ingrid Bergman, Sean Connery, Vanessa Redgrave, Anthony Perkins, Michael York, John Gielgud, Jacqueline Bisset. The list goes on. But behind the glamour, the snowy train, and Christie's devilish twists, there was plenty of chaos, food theft, misspelled credits, last-minute casting drama, and one very tired leading man whose makeup was done in the strangest way imaginable. But more on that later. The story itself, of course, is a classic. Belgian detective Hercule Poirot just happens to be aboard the luxurious Orient Express when an American businessman is found murdered in his cabin. What follows is a claustrophobic unraveling of lies, alibis, and secrets as Poirot pieces together the crime in a web of deception that stretches across borders and pasts. With so many characters to juggle, the film could have been a total mess. But Lumet handled it with precision, making sure that each star had their own spotlight moment without losing the thread of the story. Now let's talk about how this beast got made. By the 1970s, the real Orient Express had seen better days. The original carriages were mostly museum pieces, so the production had to build meticulous recreations, right down to the upholstery and table settings. They did manage to use authentic Orient Express engines, but there was one problem. They couldn't travel very far. So for those gorgeous shots of the train gliding through snowy Europe, the filmmakers had to get creative. The Jura Mountains in France stood in for Central Europe, and while the team worried for weeks about a lack of snow, Mother Nature came through at the very last minute. A blizzard hit just before shooting, dumping so much snow that they didn't have to truck any in. Though the trucks they had lined up for backup got stuck in the very same blizzard. The glamour on screen was matched by the glamour off screen. The film's cast may hold a record for sheer award power. Out of the 15 leading actors, 13 had major awards or nominations, collectively winning 45 major prizes and racking up more than 100 nominations. Talk about intimidating. The youngest cast member was Jacqueline Bisset at just 30, while the oldest was George Coulouris, playing Dr. Constantine at 71. Everyone else was somewhere between distinguished and living legend. But here's the funny thing. Most of them didn't sign on for the paycheck. They admitted openly that they just wanted the chance to work with each other. Lauren Bacall gushed about finally acting alongside Albert Finney. Sean Connery jumped in the moment his name was mentioned, and once Connery was attached, the casting dominoes fell quickly. Suddenly, everyone wanted a ticket aboard. And it's a good thing they did, because the shoot wasn't always smooth sailing. At one point, all of the luxury food prepared for the boarding scenes, hams, pastries, baskets of fruit, fine wines, was stolen from the set in Paris. Some light-fingered thief made off with the goods, forcing the crew to rebuy everything in the middle of the night. Imagine being the poor assistant who had to explain to Paramount that the foie gras had been nicked. Speaking of Paramount, they had their own headache when the U.S. rights were acquired. The British credits were a disaster. Colin Blakely's name was misspelled as Colin Blanky. Wendy Hiller's name came out as Wendy Miller, and worst of all, Albert Finney's name wasn't listed at all in the end titles. Imagine starring as Hercule Poirot, carrying the film, and your name doesn't even make the credits. Paramount scrambled to fix it, redoing the titles entirely. And while they were at it, they also Americanized the spelling of words like jewelry and color. If you've got a British DVD, you can still see the embarrassing mistakes. Now, let's circle back to Albert Finney because he had a bigger problem than missing credits. He was only 37 at the time, far too young to play the fussy 55 to 60-year-old Poirot, so special makeup was required. And not just a dab of powder. We're talking hours of prosthetics, wigs, facial padding, and elaborate styling every single day. But here's the catch. Finney was also performing nightly in a stage play at the same time. The man barely slept. So what did the studio do? They started sending an ambulance to his house every morning. He'd climb in wearing pajamas, collapse in the back, and while he snoozed on the ride to the studio, the makeup artist would start transforming him into Poirot. Imagine being so tired you can sleep through someone gluing a mustache on your face. By the time they arrived on set, the fine detail work was finished while he kept snoozing in the chair. The crew swore he barely even flinched. And speaking of flinching, the climactic scene where Poirot lays out his entire solution to the murder was a nightmare to film. It's 8 pages of uninterrupted dialogue delivered by Finney in character, while every other actor sits silently in the cramped dining car. Lumet had to shoot it from dozens of angles, since there wasn't room for multiple cameras at once. That meant take after take after take of the same long monologue. The rest of the cast, some of the most celebrated actors in the world, basically had to sit like statues for hours, keeping their poses consistent. Ingrid Bergman later joked that she spent so much time sitting frozen in that car that she considered billing them for a chiropractic adjustment. And speaking of Bergman, she's worth highlighting. Though her role was relatively small, a Swedish missionary with a nervous demeanor, she stole the show enough to win an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Ironically, she thought her performance was terrible. She even apologized during her acceptance speech, insisting she didn't deserve it. But audiences and critics disagreed. The movie itself was a massive hit, grossing over $35 million worldwide, a huge number for the time, and proving that Agatha Christie still had box office pull decades after her books were published. Even Christie herself, famously hard to please, was delighted. She attended the premiere in 1975, called it the only adaptation of her work she was fully satisfied with, and that was the last public event she ever attended before her death in 1976. High praise indeed. So between food thefts, credit typos, missing snow, and an exhausted leading man being made up in an ambulance every morning, Murder on the Orient Express was one of those productions that could have gone off the rails at any moment. Instead, it became a jewel of 1970s cinema, cementing Poirot on screen and inspiring countless adaptations to come. Now it's time to hear from you. What's your favorite version of Murder on the Orient Express? Drop your answer in the comments below.